Today I'm going to try my hand at making my own files. I've been wanting to do this for a number of years, so today I'm finally going to get around to it. I'll make a couple of files and see how they hold up and then figure out where I need to go from there. I'm going to be working with a short length of spring steel. This is just a straightened out coil spring, and it's probably the equivalent of about 5160. It's not a terribly hard steel, and obviously if I used a better quality steel I could expect to get a better quality file out of it. But I really want to experiment with the quality of files that were probably around during the Middle Ages, and at that time steelmaking was not an exact science. Sometimes they got better quality steels and sometimes they didn't, and they really didn't understand why that happened. So I'm thinking that this is probably fairly close to the better quality steels that were available at that time. And certainly they had better quality steels at times to work with, but this is what they could produce on a regular basis. So I want to see how a file made out of that type of material is going to hold up. So here I've quickly prepared a blank. I'm not going to get too carried away with this because I don't know whether these teeth are going to hold up at all. So I'm just going to start experimenting and see what happens. So here's my first attempt. The blank is annealed and I've held it in the vise, and I'm just using a regular chisel to cut lines straight across the face of the file. Now, this is probably the most crudely made file that ever was, and I don't have too high hopes of it performing well, but this is just an experiment to see whether there's any point in pursuing this. So I'm going to go through the process and evaluate the results. To harden the file, I brought the fire up to a glowing yellow heat, and then I cut the air blast and set the file in the center of the fire. And I used the residual heat from the coals to slowly bring the file up to critical temperature. Not supplying any air to the fire meant that the file did not scale up at all. Once I got the piece to critical temperature, I quenched it and I left it at that point. So this is a fully hardened piece of steel. You do not draw any temper on this at all. And here you can see that the file is actually cutting. I'm cutting a groove in this piece of 1/8 plate. It's not cutting well because it's a badly made file, but I fully expected the first few cuts to go really well and then the file to start degrading fairly quickly after that, but that didn't happen. So I'm really pleased with the results. The teeth held up very well and the cutting was very consistent from start to finish. So again, that was a big surprise. Here I've annealed the blank one more time and I'm getting it ready for the next set of teeth. I'm using the same cold chisel, only this time I'm going to use a slightly lower angle and see if that lifts out more of a cutting edge than I had in the previous attempt. This is the same 1/8" plate that I had started with, and I'm just going to continue down the notch that I started with the first set of file teeth. Once again, the file is cutting very consistently and the teeth don't seem to be getting dull very quickly. And that little bit of adjustment of the angle of the chisel was a great improvement. I'm still creating dust, but the dust particles are bigger than the first set of teeth. For this set of teeth, I'm going to be holding the chisel in a more vertical position to see how that affects the cutting edges that are formed. And in this example, the teeth are not cutting very well at all. I have to work a lot harder to get to the same depth that I did with the previous file teeth. So angling the chisel at a lower angle and cutting the teeth that way is definitely the way to go. The teeth themselves are holding up fine, it's just the shape of the teeth isn't right for cutting metal. And I'm back to just creating a really fine dust. I'm not really cutting any chips. For this example, I want to angle the cutting edge back even further, and I can't really do that with a regular cold chisel. The front face of the chisel is usually roughly vertical, and I can't really get it to lean back much further than that. It just tends to skate along the surface. So I'm going to move to a cold chisel that has a single bevel grind, much like a carpenter's chisel. I'm going to be holding it beveled down, and you can see how the back face of the chisel is now angled into the face of the file. So that should produce a very sharp chip. I've also angled the cutting edge of the chisel slightly so it produces a skewed cut in the face of the file, much the way modern files are cut, and I just want to see how that affects the performance. And this set of teeth feels like an actual file. I've had no trouble getting this notch started in the work, and I can feel the teeth cutting. You can actually see chips falling to the anvil face. I'm not creating dust, and the cut is moving along very quickly. So using the single bevel chisel and having the chisel angled at a steep angle is definitely going in the right direction. This example is turning out to be a very usable file. I don't have any problems with it at all. At this rate, it would certainly take quite a bit of filing to get it to cut as poorly as my first example, and that was still a usable file. It was, a little more work, but it was still removing material. So I think making your own files has turned out to be a really worthwhile thing to do. It will never replace common bench files, and there's no point in trying to make one anyway because they're readily available and they are relatively cheap. But there are a lot of applications where bench files are too large and needle files are too small. So having the ability to make a file to fit a specific application is just going to make your life so much easier. And as I mentioned several times before, I am really surprised at how simple the process really is. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you're interested in supporting this channel, the simplest way, of course, is to like, comment, and subscribe. If you have questions and you want to contact me directly, you can do so by emailing me at either one of the addresses that I have listed here. It may take me a couple of days, but I will get back to you. Of course, financial support is always welcome. The only product that I produce is the information contained in these free videos. So if you like the work that I'm doing and the videos that I'm putting out, and you can spare a couple of dollars a month, consider becoming a patron by clicking the orange Patreon logo at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.